thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Waltz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together, understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit, because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Waltz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys.
Hey, excuse me, what is one piece of financial advice you'd give to your younger self?
My younger self? Hey, you, don't touch that credit card.
Pay down your debt and do it on time.
who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Waltz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Waltz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Waltz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Waltz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Waltz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job. And I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say, Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane. And my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together. So all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Waltz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by the climate.
your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil, but the folks know, and like I said, again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that. And an all above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history. 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state, a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children? even if their kids are U.S. citizens. You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this. And Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our border czar, Kamala Harris, has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Waltz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us, you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well,
Nora?
Margaret, but
Thank you.
Senator, we have so much
first,
to get to.
Margaret,
Thank you,
I think it's
Nora.
important
We're
because
going to turn now to the
debate-
economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys
economy,
weren't going to
we're-
fact check. And since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank
our
you,
own
Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal process.
Kamala-
We
and
have
Kamala
so much
Harris
to get
opened up
to,
that
Senator.
pathway.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much-
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
We
CBP
wanna have-
One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora?
Thank you, Margaret. The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan, so let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm gonna give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do, we'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Waltz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer, a lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do. And some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done.
I work with law enforcement and cut violent crime by 50% to help keep families safe.
Drive the cost of food higher by 25%. Drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attacked Donald Trump's plan plans and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say, look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one, whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Waltz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Waltz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
No, that's a gross generalization.
that he did. So what Tim Waltz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor,
Please.
thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Waltz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy? You have 2
Yeah,
minutes.
well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this is I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate, Donald Trump, unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said, 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022, talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me. But as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or
That's not how the law
pro-abortion,
is.
that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong
This
about,
was-
Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong
That is
about?
not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this,
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things work best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate in just a moment.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, man. Shout out to everybody out there rocking with us, man. Thank y'all for coming and rocking with us, man, and watching this debate. I want to know what y'all think. You know, share what you think in the comments, and I'm gonna share what I think towards the end of the debate, man. This is a good one. Big Son, if you got Big Son in the building, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm in here. Thanks for tuning in. We are tuned in to the Vance versus Waltz Vice Presidential Debate. I mean, it started off a little slow to me, very boring at first, and then they just started throwing the blows at the end.
Yeah.
Like they were trying to finish a round off good or something, you know. But for the most part, I feel as though we should, hold the comment, because it's so much right now, bro. To be honest, it's heating up, and I don't want to kind of what I want to say, take away the wave, because it just heated up, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't expect this. They heating up.
Who do you have in the head? Who you got in the lead right now?
I mean, I don't know. After that last one, bro, they kind of neck and neck right now. After them last couple blows, they just threw at each other. That was neck and neck blow right there. So I would say neck and neck right now.
All right. I got Vance.
Who you got?
I got Vance right now, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because in too many occasions in the first half of this, or in the opening round of this, too many occasions did I hear Governor Waltz say, I agree with what you said, Vance. I agree with what you said. He said that too many times for me to kind of give him the lead. He said that too many times for me to give him the lead, you know. And I just think Vance, and I'm gonna tell you, it's a spot in here that I think that why I'm giving him the lead too, because I took points away from him, from Waltz in one portion of this. The part where they asked him about 1982 in Hong Kong and him going to that place in Hong Kong, and he basically lied. And the lady asked him about it, and instead of him just saying, "Look, man, I lied," he just went into this wild story about.
Yeah, he went into that wild story, and then when she asked him again, he was like, "Yeah, well,
Right,
you know,
right.
I did, you know,
Listen,
I just misread it. I didn't, I wasn't there at that time." He came back and said, you know, he
but
wasn't there at that time, but
you see what
that's what I was looking at too. Like, you know,
yeah,
like,
I had,
bro, she just asked you a question, bro. Don't
yeah,
try to, you know, sidestep the question. She just asked you a question. Like, that's
yeah.
what I don't like with these politicians. Sometimes when you ask them questions, that's what they do, start sidestepping and then pointing fingers like, nah, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna answer the question.
That's
But
why.
that's why I say I looked at him funny on that, and then I looked at JD funny, because then he like, oh yeah, I support Trump, but on this policy, I'm like, bro, either you with him or you not, bro. What we doing here? Like, this is what I don't like about politicians. Politicians want to jump with the wind as it goes.
All right, we
Stay
got.
right there. Stay
Hold
still.
that thought, big son. Hold that thought. We back up. We back up. Hold that thought. We
All right.
back on live, man. Y'all listen to Studio Runners Radio.
Teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Waltz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartels. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues, making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns. And there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the Vice President is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising? And what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens if you lower energy prices? As Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill. One of the biggest drivers of housing costs, aside from illegal immigration, is, think about it. If a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, yeah. Governor, we will get to you in a moment, but Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor,
Where's the
your
study?
time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Waltz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local. Many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. It's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill, but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think it's an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do, but I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They're figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Waltz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable
There's going to be some changes around the firehouse.
How old are you?
How old are you? You almost died.
But I didn't. I'm still here. Chicago Wednesday, new on NBC and Peacock.
Of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone. That's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying healthcare once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret.
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret.
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. those companies provide paid family medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start. The family works better. We stay in their employers. We get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some cases, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with childcare. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide childcare in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote childcare because, look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on childcare as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families, cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the childcare shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the childcare shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide childcare options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's $5,000 or $6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy is growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Waltz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that, to me, is a much bigger threat.
Park City is a place where you can ski and ride through an endless snow globe, then dine inside one.
With the senator, but
me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag. Several later died, and it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, "We're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties." The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement, but this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the
threatening or
power
hate
of
speech.
government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the
masks.
governor does
That's
have the
not
floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to
Please.
respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News Vice Presidential Debate continues.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. It is now time for the closing statement. Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something, not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Waltz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say, I'm so proud to be doing this and I'm rooting for you. God bless you and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle.
All right. Let's get the guys in. All right. So that was a full debate. Tim Waltz and JD Vance. What are y'all initial thoughts? What you got here? We got Point B in the building. We got Big Son in the building. What are y'all initial thoughts? Full debate. Live. Quick.
I'm a little behind, so I'm still watching. So y'all go ahead.
All right.
I like the debate. I mean, I felt like it was a pretty good debate. It wasn't as, it's not going to make as many headlines as the Harris-Trump debate, but I felt like it was a good debate. A lot of the issues were brought up, and they were, they got a chance to, say their stance on it. And I think both candidates did actually really well, especially for this being my first time seeing each one of these people debate.
Okay. I'll go, and Big Son can go after me. I feel like they both had their moments. I feel like the first half was more JD Vance. Second half, Tim Waltz came back and did much better in the second half of the debate. I think Tim Waltz I think he was really good on gun control. I want to say, is that with Tim Waltz? Yeah, on gun control.
Yeah, that was Tim Walsh on gun
control. I like what he said on gun control when he talked about the suicide rates, and he said that rural areas. He said in Minnesota, the rural areas is where all the gun violence is happening. It ain't all just in the cities, So I like that part. He talked about again the suicide rates, and he talked about the mental health side of gun violence. I think that's really where he stood out to me at. I don't agree with him on the immigration policy. I mean, he did Waltz, that thing when he said most Americans, invite others to come in to do X, Y, and Z. I don't agree with that. So I'm at odds there. I didn't agree with what he said there. Waltz when he said I'm gonna just go through, and I'll go through both candidates a little bit of things that stood out to me and things that that did not, or things that I agree with, don't agree with. This is my thoughts on it. You know what I mean? So again, said to Big Son earlier, the part where he lied about the protest in Hong Kong in 1989, and when the lady asked about, he get to telling the story. He told the story about, I don't know what the hell the story was about, but
he talked his way around that one, didn't he?
Yeah, I don't know what the story was about.
He got the dancing on that one.
I mean, he did dance, but at the end of the day, he did answer the question after he got to finish dancing.
Yeah, but it was wild.
So he lied. He admitted he lied, just like JD lied. And JD said, yeah, I did lie. So, like, I can take that more from somebody than just flat out denying the truth or flat out denying a lie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. One thing I did like about what JD Vance said is, like, when he was basically going on Trump, they like, man, they brought up all the old tweets. They old tweeted himself on that jump, right? And so he was like, well, look, I was believing what the media was telling me, everybody else. Basically, he kept it real. That's a real dude answer right there, man. Man, look, man, I just pay attention to what everybody else was see. He kept it real, and he said, I don't really feel right now, and we basically, chopped it up, and now I understand a little bit better. When I feel like when you get up there and you start dancing around your lies or dancing around your quotes that you said in the past, that shows ingenuineness. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to use it right now. Ingenuineness is what you would experience at that point.
All right. So look, this is what we're going to do, right? So we're going to go into individually what them guys said in different portions, right? So at the beginning, when they talked about immigration, JD Vance's stance was basically to stop the bleeding. And he said, he wanted to stop criminal migrant deportation. So he said all the migrants that's over here committing crimes, he said he wants to get them up out of here. He said basically it make it harder for them to undercut the economy, meaning all of this work for $5, work for whatever the under minimum wage. He said he wants to make it harder for them to do that. He said and reverse. He said it was stupid. He would say it was stupid for Harris and them to reverse Trump's policies. 94 counts of Trump's policies they reversed, obviously, or 94 parts of his bill was reversed by the Biden administration, which JD Vance said that it led to massive immigration, illegal immigration, reversing all of Trump's policies. He pretty much said that was stupid. That was just stupid. Y'all shouldn't have did it. That's why it happened. What do y'all think on that? On about JD Vance's stances on that, on regarding immigration?
I mean, like they gave political answers, in my opinion. It's just, I really, just in my opinion, they up there just trying to not necessarily dance around, but to answer it, but not answer it at the same time. So I heard a lot of political answers. I feel like this was one of them.
All right. So that's what Vance said in regards to immigration. And, Waltz came back and said that the only person who has actually dealt with the border in an extensive way was Kamala Harris, because she would prosecute people, drug cartels, etc. Being the when she was the state's attorney for California. So he made that point, and he said that Mexico didn't pay a dime like Trump said they was. And he said that Trump is the reason that the bills didn't get passed.
Yeah,
would have helped. And I mean, I don't know. That was his comeback. That was
that's what I'm saying. Political answers, political mudslinging, right? So, just to go into my statement a little bit more, so people could probably fairly understand it better. When I mean talking political, you got the political points, the mudslinging that you got to say this person did this or this was horrible. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. I do not agree with Kamala Harris's border policies right now, at least in my opinion. I don't agree with them.
Do y'all think people should be able to just come over here like that?
No. I don't agree with her border policies. But
Vito. Let's get Vito. Uptown Vito in the building, baby. Uptown Vito got the whole crew tonight. Uptown Vito, introduce yourself. We got a big crowd tonight, man. Good audience tonight. So introduce yourself to the people.
Oh, man.
Oh, we got you breaking up. You're breaking up. We do not know who you is right now. Oh, yeah. One more time for me, Vito.
Yes. Uptown Vito. Welcome. Shout out to everybody that's out there, senior vet on the podcast space, mostly covering the Washington football team, formerly known as the Redskins, Washington sports area news, and more. Right now, we're covering the debate. I am fresh on the debate right now. I just got in from work, so pop out with what you got.
Okay. So just to fill Vito in and get him caught up, we went through just the first policy. For instance, Vance on immigration said we need to stop bleeding. He said his plan is to stop the criminal. It start with deporting the migrants who have committed crimes. He said he wanted to do that. That's JD Vance, the Trump Vance ticket. He said he wanted to make it harder for them to undercut the minimum wages. And he said it was stupid for Harris and them to reverse all of Trump's border policies trying to prove a point. He said it was stupid. They ain't had no business doing it. All right, then Waltz came back and said that Kamala Harris is the only one on the panel who has actual experience dealing with the border directly, because she was a prosecutor for a border state where she used to directly prosecute cartel members, etc. he said that Trump's failed to make Mexico pay for the wall like Trump said he was going to do. He said Mexico ain't pay a daggone dime for it. And then he said that that Trump was the reason that the border bills didn't get passed, that him and Kamala Harris could not pass the border bills because of Trump. That is the reason why, because he called the members on the panel, on the Congress, and said, do not pass the bill for political reasons. That's why the bill didn't get passed. I'm just trying to get your guys' thoughts on that round and both guys' approaches to what the questions were, which was regarding immigration and exactly what's going down in regards to immigration.
Okay. Hold on one second. I'm just pulling up some stuff. Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, excuse me, when Trump was let's start with the Democratic candidate. Whether Kamala Harris, has experience on this or not, she had a track record of locking up cartel members that were coming across the borders. Yes, no, that's what was said.
That's what he said. That's what he said. That's it. According to Tim Waltz, yes. That's
okay. So what about the ones that were already in the state?
I guess she prosecuted whatever. I mean, I don't know.
I was just going to say that again. Questions can be asked with questions in these particular debates and stuff. And yes, it's supposed to address what she was asked for. I mean, what they were asked. That side was asked. But I don't know if having the experience is the only thing that you need. But I'd say that that's a good start. So I don't want to argue that. But the response on what you're going to do is a question. It's not whether the person has experience. And that's the second time in a debate when you've had more than enough time to prepare an answer to tell us or give us a solution on what you would do. And every time the answer is we have experience in this. That's not telling us anything. That's not even giving us an idea of what you did in the past exactly, other than be a part of the panel that made the decision. Were you the final decision, or were you a signature that went on a paper of a directive that was led by someone else? These are questions that I believe that should be asked along with that question. On Trump's side, not to play defender, to be biased, I do understand the rhetoric that he did not get the wall built or the support from Mexico to build the wall. But if I am incorrect, and please help me, because this was usually my defense in this part, wasn't he stalled and blocked several times in trying to complete this? Was he not also looked at by the country as some type of bad person for trying to do it because of the way that he used the words of trying to build the wall, or what he was building the wall for?
Yeah, I would say, truthfully speaking, like, we're going to keep it hood. We're going to keep it hood, man. Yeah, they was mad as I don't know what when Trump said that he was going to put a wall up. A lot of people laughed. Let's be honest.
And the same side that he was voted into, which is the Republican side, are who blocked him via trying to build this wall. That's who blocked the support was the Republican. So even the Democratic side saying that Trump stopped it because I'm tired of them trying to revise something that I did, or I'm tired of them trying to say that they're going to do something or say that it's their idea, but I'm the guy that came up with it. No, I don't want you to push it. And because I say this is what happens when I say in basketball. And this is just a good example for me. Hopefully others can understand where I'm coming from. In basketball, if you push me and I go back and I push you, but the referee saw my push, I'm going to get a technical foul. I can argue with the ref all day about you pushing me first. They're only going to penalize what they saw. So I think that was a case in the Trump issue where he went out and made an outburst to the Supreme Court about not doing it, but you also never want to hear what he's talking about. So no one will address why he made this statement. It's just more so that you made it. Well, what about the umpteen amount of times that he's had words to the state, or the word, whatever the word to the state is, or that the presentation that they have where he goes out and
State of
speaks.
the Union. I know what you're
Thanks,
talking
State of the
about.
Union. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. So I didn't stumble on my words. I definitely appreciate that. But when he does the State of the Union and addressed it several times, the next day there's slander about how he's brought this about. And I said this in my personal statement that the country right now loves the beautiful lie and hates the ugly truth. In that round, I would say for the Harris side, please give me more on what you're going to do and not the experience that you have. That doesn't help me when we've all had people in position that had experience and didn't do what we expected or thought that they were going to do. So that doesn't push the needle for me in that particular aspect. And then the other side, who has actually been a president during that time, the immigrants that were coming over, his address was to try to stop that. And the people on his side and other pushback didn't allow that to be passed. So this is the result of not letting that go through. And you're going to blame the person that wasn't able to do it because there was pushback. I don't know how to look at that if I'm going to go about this fairly, other than to say that I don't necessarily agree that Trump had the best support in trying to do something that is now warranted because of all of the other things that have fell out afterwards.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you there. My thoughts is, let me go back to the points to make sure I can get my thoughts all the way out in order. Okay, so I do think that you got to when it comes to the immigration problem. I mean, JD Vance said it was 25 million immigrants who have fled into this country over the last 3 years. I mean, that number is wild. 25 million in 3 years. That's just a lot. That's a lot. And that's just, it is what it is. We can all talk about whatever, but the number is crazy. Whether it's 25 million or not, the number is probably outrageous. Just to be 100.
That's what you can account for, or at least
the number is probably outrageous, even if it's not 25 million, right? And so I think that is where you need to start. Is you need to start with stopping the bleeding. You know, figure out what you got to do to stop the floodgates from opening, whether that's change policy, whether that's tighten up the actual border itself, whatever it is, you got to do that. Then you go to.
I have a question real quick. Is there something that Trump is doing now or something that he set in place now that I'm missing that has stopped them from doing something about the border crisis at the time we're speaking of now?
Nothing is stopping them. They could do whatever they want.
I asked everyone with a realistic question. With the president-elect that is running for the Democratic side, which is Kamala Harris, as VP, I want to know what you did about the border situation. I don't want to know what you did when you had prior experience as a prosecutor in California. You are a vice president of the country. Where were your suggestions in the last 3 years while this 25 million approximately has been let into the country? When the president prior to this, or former president, excuse me, prior to this, whether I like him or not, was president, even with all things said, there was not that many people in the country or allowed in the country or coming through the borders at that time. There was a problem which needed to be addressed. And 6 years later, or 7 years later, the problem has vastly gotten larger. What has happened in between? Because I think that people seem to somehow forget that these aren't two brand new people running. There's a former president and there's someone that's currently in office right now. And the current person in office right now is saying that everything was the fault of the person that was in office prior to her being in office.
It's crazy because it's crazy you say that, because to your point, that is what JD Vance. Okay, in the first half of the debate, it was primarily Tim Waltz saying that, hey, Donald Trump, everything's Donald Trump's fault. Donald Trump. I think he came off a lot better in the second half of that debate when he stopped blaming stuff on Trump and started talking about his own experiences and his own opinions. And so it's crazy that you said that's what he was doing, because that's exactly what he did. The first half of the debate, most of the debate in the first half was just Trump, and it hurt him. It hurt him, in my opinion. You know, it hurt.
And I didn't see this. No, I promise everybody, I haven't seen anything. I literally just walked in the house. I was dealing with something else. So I came on because I didn't know why we were on live on a Tuesday. I promise I didn't. And I honestly forgot the debate was tonight just by accident. So I'm making a statement that I did just now to say that I've been saying these things. I haven't been saying them because I'm against any one side. I don't think that I agree with either side right now because of how the country has looked over the last 10 years. That's my personal opinion. I think if I were to select what I would say I am either a liberal or an independent because I think I just stand for things that I may agree with both sides actually, and some things that I disagree with both sides. So I think independent is just saying that I may stand in the middle. You have to make a decision, but I think in politics, I don't think we give enough credit to the independent or to the liberal that may be a conservative in that regard, that just may have a different way of a different approach, because there's not enough representatives in that party to really govern a system where you would understand where they would be, so where those rules would be balanced. It'd be a lot of Republicans stopping it, a lot of Democrats stopping it. But again, that was just to say that I didn't know anything of this. But to say that, Ro, is just to say that I know I'm not off track on how I feel like they're going to approach this election. And I think that hurts the country when we rather argue than find solutions. That's in anything. Coming from coaching, we can talk about the problem and say we got we got blocking problems. But unless you work on the problem, you're really just saying that we're bad and we're going to continue to be that way. Let's address it. Let's get to it and find out what helps us get better. And that's what's going to help us get better.
Right. I definitely agree. And I just want to say something about tonight's debate for the ones that didn't get an opportunity to see it. For one, it was cool. Those two guys, I would vote for them on one ticket. JD Vance and Tim Waltz ticket. I would vote for Vance. Vance would be the president though for me. And I would probably vote for them for that ticket. I think those guys had a lot of chemistry up there. I think they were respectful to one another. I think they really got into some policy. They really got into some just some real debating. You know, it was a real healthy, clean,
something that we needed because it's really close to voting time.
Right.
I agree. That's definitely what we needed, bro. it wasn't all.
We probably should get this at once a week until voting time.
Yeah, it was a good debate. It had mudslinging in it as far as to the candidates, but it was still respectful. You know what I mean? This was political mudslinging, not so much as just insult mudslinging like you would normally, like you've seen the last couple debates. I would say.
I was getting ready to ask that. Do you guys think that do you guys think that if Kamala and Donald ran the debate this week, do you think that this would have hurt the election?
It did this debate. You on which party though? Let me say this.
On either, because I think if they continue if they continue the way that previous debates have gone.
Okay, let me say
with the rhetoric of just going back and forth instead of addressing what the questions were, more like what you described the guys were doing this evening.
Yeah, let me say this, and this is just my personal opinion. I think Tim Waltz is a better candidate than Kamala Harris. That's just my personal opinion. JD Vance, a lot of people will say JD Vance is a much better candidate than Donald Trump as well. I don't know, because Donald Trump has one thing that Kamala Harris don't have for me. And this is a lot of what JD Vance said during his debate tonight. And this is the part I do agree with him on. Donald Trump got a resume. We can say whatever we want to say, but Donald Trump got a resume. And so even where I don't agree with his words, I might not even understand his approach. He is somebody who has gotten it done before. You know, under some really strenuous circumstances when you start to consider
without spending the country's money as well. In my opinion, in my heavy opinion, I do not know or have any information that leads to this, so I don't know if I'm right. So I'm not suggesting that. But if you ask me, inflation is due to the money we've given Ukraine for a war that we're not supposed to be a part of.
I agree.
That's why it won't go down anytime soon, because can you imagine giving away that much money and we're in debt already? That doesn't make any financial sense. Yeah. Donald Trump would have never done that.
It doesn't. But I don't even think they go to war. I think that one thing about Tim, like when Tim Walz was talking about Donald Trump meeting up with Russia and meeting up with North Korea and meeting up with all of these countries that we consider to be enemies in America, I think that's a smart thing to do. I think that if you've had these world beefs going on for years and years and years and decades at this point, maybe even centuries, if you really want to look at some of these wars, right? If you got a guy that's going to go in and say, you know what, we need to end the beef. How can we stop? How can we at least have peace? And throughout his term, you would say that there was a level of peace. There wasn't what's going on right now going on during that term.
What you said and what Rose said,
kinda,
he has a resume that
yeah.
stated during his tenure, this is not what was going on. If you take COVID away, he almost had, I'm not perfect, and nothing in what I mean is perfect, because there are things that, like I said, I disagree with too. But as a president, and a president without, his flaw comes from his own business action, his own business doing. Those things don't hurt the country. They hurt him and his brand at times. If you can name me something that hurts the country that he does, okay, we can address that. But majority of the things that he's done while he was in the office were for the country. His wordplay, how he said things, that's just good old boy talk. And I'm sorry, I'm not racist, but daggone if I ain't never been approached in that way of being, prejudiced against. And I know how it sounds, I know how it feels. To hear someone in that position speak like that is the same way as I was to expect that Obama didn't go up there and use Ebonics while he was in office, because you just can't do that. It's just someone in the position that knows that I can do this because I have the power to in this position. So did you take advantage of it? No, that would be the genuine and nice thing. But we don't live in a nice world. Like, I don't know where you feel like it's painted up. Well, not you, but anyone that feels like it's painted up that way. There are things that are unfair to everyone. There are things that have to be done in order for things to get done. In my opinion, to not have to spend money to save people, to not have to spend money to prevent wars, to tell other countries that we're not going to bend to what you want us to do in order to do business with you. Those are good approaches and good business standings, because I've done business before that I don't think that she has experience to do. Donald has experience to do that, and he has a resume that backs up. At least I can say that I believe that he would be able to go into these situations and get out something for the country, something out of these situations, not put us in the hole further in those situations.
I agree. Now, let me say this. During the debate, they read a poll which said 56% of the country agrees with mass deportation. And when they asked Tim Waltz about it, Tim Waltz said that the reason that 56% of the country agrees with mass deportation is because Donald Trump made it an issue. He basically put the issue in front and center and made it an issue, which sort of served as the public's opinion, why the public's opinion is so strong on that. Where do you guys stand on that, as far as whether that is the result of it, and where do you guys stand on mass deportation?
I mean, I disagree with Tim Walz when he said that, to be honest. I think we care about what's going on as far as the immigrants, illegal immigrants, not just immigrants, the legal immigrants, because it's affected several different communities throughout, the United States. So him saying that Donald Trump was the one that made it an issue, now I think that we all have experienced it in some which way, shape, or form. Nothing that I'm willing to speak about right now, but we can see here in America, and I'm not just saying in Springfield, Ohio, I'm saying everywhere throughout the country, you can see a big difference, and so I don't think that was a rhetoric that he brought out and made it a thing. I think that it was already a thing amongst the American people.
I'd say, if you want to say that, then would you say that Obama is the reason that COVID was an issue because he brought it up? Because if I'm not mistaken, he brought it up before Donald took oath. I don't think that that's fair to say, so I don't think that this is fair to say. I think it's a result of not doing something about the problem. If someone brought it up, that's more of an applause to him than a shame that it's an issue. If I told you it was an issue, let's do something about it, and y'all didn't like the way I said it, and now this is the result, you should probably thank me for knowing something ahead of time than rather trying to let it just happen.
Absolutely. Okay. Now, okay, so just to let the people know, even though we mainly do sports here on this network, we do a bunch of different things, and there will be a few political shows that will air at some point coming out of the network. Man, politics, we are based in Washington, D.C. This is a Washington, D.C. show. Even the sports programs that we cover, the team that we cover mainly is the Washington. I call them Redskins. You call them whatever you want to call them, but the Washington football team. That's mainly who we cover. So this is a DC sports network. So it's no way we wasn't going to do a little politics. We are vetted enough to do it, and our demographic does not participate in it enough. That is what we feel has been a big problem within our community, is we don't speak about these things enough. And when these things do happen, meaning debates and other programs, we are not involved and we are not discussing, we are not exchanging information. So what I want to do now is during the debate, right? During the debate, JD Vance brought up something. And so I want to discuss that, right? And so what JD Vance said was that Americans, that the illegal immigrants was filing a form called the CBP-1, right? Which automatically grants an illegal alien status, legal status in this country to be able to do the things they're doing. What do you guys feel about that? He said, if you don't go through the 10-year process, you don't do nothing, you just automatically granted legal status. What do you guys feel about that? And just in general, overall, when it comes to the process of granting legal status?
That's a hostile takeover. That you're preparing for a hostile takeover. If my neighbor can move in somewhere in the area I live in and can stay where he stays at and not pay taxes on anything, how is that fair to someone who has to? How is it that someone that can come in that doesn't have anything, that may need help, can be given free housing, free education, free health care, no taxes, and be given money and a place to stay so that they're comfortable? And that's not how the American lifestyle or living is. What a part of the American dream is that, other than a hostile takeover?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if that's the case, they like you saying, why is it that the average American isn't living that way before you are deciding that you can gift to people that are not citizens of America? I mean, I couldn't.
The country is in debt. It's no way possible.
Well, I argue that they do the same thing with these carryouts, with these Ethiopians, with all of these nations that come over here, and they have these businesses, and for 7 years they can be on, and then after that 7 years they can take their name off and put somebody else on, and they don't have to pay taxes, and that business keep on thriving in America, making money on our soil and not paying no taxes. All of those businesses across the board, they come over here and do that. Like Vito say, that's not the American way. That's not how we do. That's not going to inflate our economy. It's going to deflate.
What would be a satisfactory
process? I got a question. Hold up. I got a quick question. Can we do that in any other countries that they do that in? So let's say I hear Haiti, Venezuela, a lot of different other country migrants have been coming over here. Can we go to any of those countries and then kind of get some of the same treatment? Is it back and forth that way?
We get some of the same treatment. It's a buy-in over there, though. They're paying people to come to that country. Like, you get a substantial amount of money, and that's it. You know what I'm saying? You build yourself up from that. It's not, you stay over here 10, 15 years, and we just keep pouring money, keep on however long your businesses or your carry-outs or your restaurants, whatever businesses you have going on, however long they go, you're not getting supplied for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, they give you this amount of money when you move to them countries that you're talking about, because I've been seeing that. They give you a certain amount of money. These countries are offering a certain amount of money, but they're not giving you money for you to sustain 21 years. No, you got to build yourself up. You know what I'm saying? But they are offering money, but not like they doing here in America. They just not doing it like that nowhere else. Not that I know of.
Well, the other countries are not taking you in as if you're a refugee. America is taking you in as if you're a refugee. That's why they're offering help in a way that they wouldn't be in another country. The other country is saying, hey, we have a nice place to live. If you like to come here, this is what you can come here and live for. And instead of putting you through all of this to become a citizen, if you want to do dual citizenship or if you want to be a citizen, this is what you have to do. And we'd give you a basically like you getting a job. We'll pay your fee to move over here if you want to. And that's cool. But it's not helping you set up your family, set up other family members that need to get over here because you make enough money that you can afford to get your little cousin over here. And again, y'all are not paying taxes. And I'm not against anybody of any race or any culture living in America. America is America. It's plenty of room for a lot of people. But I don't feel like it's fair to charge the people who live here or put us through certain rules or disablements to allow someone else to do the same thing and say that there's no reason to stop what they're doing or prevent them from doing the same thing that is done to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so this is my thought on it. Is you don't want to create a unfair playing field for your natives, for the people that are actually the people who actually vote for you. That's another thing. You know, the people that you're supposed to represent, their best interest should be number one, in my opinion. I mean, especially if I'm a Congress member, a House of Representatives, that's literally what the job is. I represent the people. In whatever state I'm the House of Representative member of. So I just feel like their first well-being should be top priority, right? Meaning the people you represent. And I feel like if it was top priority, then the results would show that. And I don't know that the results are showing that because you have, especially in some of these places like Washington, D.C., for instance, that's where we from. Of course, I just said it. Here, you have illegals who are gifted scooters, right? And stuff like the transportation, basically a way to get around when that they have never done anything like that for the residents and the people actually here who are from here. They just never done anything like that. So it does create a sense of envy within these communities, a sense of resentment.
We thought the bike lanes was for one reason. Who's to say that they weren't for this?
Exactly. So
we think small, they think long term. We think small sometimes. Who's to say that those bike lanes were created for the bikes and not the scooters?
Exactly. So that would be more money, more millions of dollars paid out. When none of that money, or when some of it, I guess, does go back to the community, but I mean, to shell out that amount of money when you have so much poverty in a certain place, and unaddressed poverty that has sat there for years, same structures, the buildings are the same structures. Woodland, for instance, and I don't know, maybe Woodland is like some sort of historic thing where you can't change it, but Woodland buildings look pretty much the same as it always has looked, just a new paint job. So, and people live there. This is where people live at. So, and it's no disrespect to Woodland or nothing like that, but I'm talking about infrastructure, So I don't know. That y'all had money to do that. Y'all should have had some money to rebuild those people around Woodland and some new buildings. I mean, maybe I'm wrong for thinking like that.
No, it's home. It's area, like,
maybe I don't know. So I mean, so it's just see where's your priorities and what is going on, and then the people are wondering. The people in DC are wondering, just like the people around the country is wondering. So, I just think that that's one thing you got to really consider is what you do. What type of resentment are you creating towards the people themselves? If the law is you got to come over here legally, Why are they not? Why are we allowing someone to just openly break the law? I just don't know that either. I don't get what's going on here. Because to my understanding, y'all come down hard on our community, my community specifically, when y'all catch any of us doing anything. Look at Diddy. Look at Diddy. Right? So I mean, and honestly,
Why you gotta use Diddy? Everybody use.
I'm just saying. Look, prime example. And let's be clear about this. Diddy is not being accused of murder, right? Right? He's not.
I ain't knocking Diddy. Right?
That people die coming across this border.
Listen, bro. I ain't knocking Diddy, right? I'm gonna just say this. It's speculation that he done a lot of wild stuff. And
I just said, look at the way we are treating this man based on allegations.
Right, but what I'm saying is that we could find somebody that ain't potentially blow somebody's car up in a jealous rage.
Look, I'm not.
You know,
there you go. There you go.
Well, Kid Cudi made the statement, bro. Ain't no day he go. Kid Cudi made the statement in the statement.
Now somebody name is in it.
I ain't named nobody.
Now somebody name is in it.
Hold on. Kid Cudi is in the statement himself. He put his own self in the statement, bro.
We ain't got to acknowledge him though. What is we acknowledging him for? Y'all put that name out there.
Nah, you said put people's name. He put his name in the statement. He put himself in the statement.
I don't know. I don't know that.
All I'm saying is that
what he didn't do. I hope the black man come home. You know what I'm saying? At some point, if he didn't do whatever justice served, I don't know what to think right now.
I hope I'm gonna say this. I hope Diddy is innocent.
I want to root for black men. That's what I'm gonna say. I want to root for the black
men. And I'm hoping, right? But I'm just saying that the allegations on him right now is a little wild for us to be trying to, nah. I would like to use somebody that don't have the wildest. That's the wildest allegations you can get.
I'm just saying. Okay, back to back. So Tim Waltz.
Yeah, thank you.
Tim Waltz said that. I mean, and it's no offense. I'm just saying, if it's going to be laws, let's all abide by the laws. That's what I'm saying. That's the only thing I would say when I brought up Diddy, how people get vilified for not abiding by the law, right?
I agree with that.
So if it's going to be laws, why let's everybody got to go about what the law say. And if you don't do what the law say, you're supposed to go to jail. I thought that's how it worked. Is that not how it works? You go to jail when you break the law.
I agree with that. That's the way it's supposed to work, at least, right?
So so to say that people ain't supposed to go to jail, they get sent back to their country and then they come back right over here like the next day. I mean, I don't know if this is what they said is occurring. I don't know.
I ain't gonna say this a little off subject, because if any one of us here on this panel ain't pay our taxes in 15 years, that's where we be at right now. In jail.
So I'm not gonna even ask because I'm not seeing. There we go.
That's all I'm saying. If any one of us, bro, let's be honest. If any one of us, for any reason, decide not to pay our taxes for 15 years, where will we be?
I'm not going to.
Now, listen, deciding not to pay your taxes, like tax evasion versus you doing your taxes and you don't owe anything, is two different things.
That's true. That's true.
How you don't owe no taxes though, bro?
Did you file?
This is my thing. No. Out of all that money, how you don't owe no taxes?
Because
whatever the law say.
It depends.
You got a good tax man.
Listen.
You a crook. We're gonna be honest. We ain't gonna sit up here and play that game. You a goddamn crook. You don't pay, bro. Nah, knock it off, bro. We ain't gonna sit here like we ain't. Come on, man.
Hey, listen, I'm about to get
zero tax. No. Let's be real. $0, bro. I don't care how good your tax man is.
Let me explain this to you. Let me explain it to you. Let me do some tax breakdown, okay? So
there ain't no breakdown. Let's break off.
Listen, realistically, right? You pay taxes on the money that you make. Now, if you get your money from a gift, like a trust fund, like something like that, okay, that's not taxable money. So if you spend your trust fund money, right, you spend, and this is for people that got enough money to do this. See, Black people, we haven't established these certain things to do. So guess what? If your business is breaking even as far as the money that you spend and the money that you make, then guess what? There's no taxes to pay. And then in certain cases, if you don't make over a certain amount, there is no taxes to pay. So if your tax man is the right person, or tax woman, in today's society, if the tax person is nice,
Man, they be hitting heads for the taxes.
Then guess
if you
what?
ain't in jail, then you ain't do nothing wrong. Because they be hitting heads. They come out. They don't care who you
Right.
are. They locked up Lauryn Hill. They locked up Wesley Snipes.
Right.
Man, they be getting
Y'all talk about small fries though.
So I'm just
That's
saying.
they small fries. They small fries. And guess what color their skin is? Guess what color their skin is? Just like I said, if it was one of us, they would have found a way. Oh no, they're stealing money somehow, some way. There's no way that they ain't paid not one red cent of taxes for 15 years. They would have came behind us, bro.
Since y'all nice and spiced up, let's get back to the debate. Since y'all nice and hype.
That's all I'm saying. They would have came on our heels. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Let one of us, we had a bomb tax man all we want. Let one of us do that.
Let me ask y'all this. Since y'all nice and hype, let me ask y'all this. In the state of Minnesota, JD Vance brought this up during the debate. In the state of Minnesota, this law that Tim Waltz brags about, he signed the abortion law. Great abortion law. That's what Tim Waltz, he said he signed it. He signed it in the law.
Amen.
He signed it in the law, right? JD Vance said that in this abortion bill, right, after a child is born, right, after the child is born or whatever that happens, whatever the case may be, whatever that happens.
He said botched abortion.
It was a botched abortion.
A botched abortion. The doctor literally has no obligation to continue any care to that child, meaning that child can be will effectively be put to death because there's no more care being done to the child in a botched abortion, right? In a botched abortion.
Right.
What do you guys feel?
But look, he said that. But he said that as a rebuttal to Donald Trump trying to wipe the abortion away, period.
What do you
So
guys?
you're not going to have the option for that anyway.
No, he's not trying to wipe abortion away, period. That is a false rhetoric that is heard on the internet.
He's not.
Bro, did he not overturn? Come on, man. We talking about Roe v. Wade, right?
That's what Vance. Okay, let me get into that. Let's clarify it. Hold on, let me clarify the law because a lot of people confused. Let's clarify what actually took place with Roe versus Wade, right? What actually took place is originally you could not deny abortion. Originally, you couldn't deny abortion, whatever the case may be. So what the Supreme Court said was, okay, let's send this back to your respective states and let you guys vote for it on your own ballots. We will no longer force doctors to do those types of procedures or force anybody to do those types of procedures. It's no longer mandated. But in your state, it can be mandated if you vote for it because it goes back to the ballot. It goes back to your state and people have to vote on it now. That's what happened with that. Just to clarify. That's what Donald Trump did. He let it got back to the ballot where the people can vote for it themselves. Now, if you live in a state where, the majority feels opposite of how you feel, you're going to have to get out here and do some campaigning. Do some educating.
Yeah, basically. Or go move.
That's what I would do if it meant that much to me.
Or move.
You got to dedicate your time. You got to dedicate your time.
My thing at that point is, what do we have you in place for then?
Who?
If you're gonna break it down to be state by state,
I would say this. That also there's certain parameters that would matter. Now, like if there was a person that was a victim of rape or incest, I believe, then
Well, depending on the state,
yeah,
depending on the
no,
state,
no,
depending on what's on the
but,
ballot.
yeah, but even with them overturning it, that's what they're trying to get. So it's not like just no matter what, abortion is abolished. Some states will say, okay, if you are a victim of incest, like, let's say somebody's dad raped them and got them pregnant, then you would be able to get an abortion in that state. But even if they don't do regular abortions, you get what I'm saying?
Right,
So
right.
those
And I mean, and
parameters,
honestly,
certain
and let's
states.
be clear about this. Honestly, this is a delicate situation, right? That's the first thing. But and I'm not saying I'm on either side. I'm pro-life. So again, I'm
Oh, yeah,
pro-life.
I'm pro all life anyway, and I'm also pro you decide to do what you want.
Yeah,
You
and
know what
I'm
I'm saying? Because God gives you the free will. So who are y'all to tell me I don't have free will?
yeah, God, I
But
don't.
but a person don't have free will of them getting raped or not, bruh. Like it's a delicate
That,
situation.
and, but that's what I'm saying. You should have a free
But I'm
will.
saying,
If you get raped, you should have a free will to go say, guess what? I don't want to keep this baby. You shouldn't have to keep it.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing. That's what it is. Abolishing, I mean, making it go away is not pro-life. That's what I'm saying. If you kill the baby, it's not pro-life. If those are messed up circumstances,
No,
if you
no,
pro-life,
no, I feel what you're saying, bro. I
If you
feel what you're
pro-life for
saying,
all life,
pro-life.
yeah,
I
if you
feel
pro-life and
what
if
you're
you believe
saying,
that,
but how we gonna force that person to
that's not
bring this life in the world that they didn't agree to bring in the world? You
hold
feel what I'm
on,
saying?
but you
So
can't
that
listen to
it's
me.
pro-life, but if we're
But
gonna go
listen,
pro-life, you got to go whole full pro-life, not
you
just if.
you have to, and this is what is the thing with politics. You have a strong way of feeling one way, and another person feels a strong way about the other. If in the words pro-life or all life, what you're saying, and I'm sorry if you don't agree, but what you're saying in pro-life is that that person doesn't have a choice. And
right.
that's where the fine line is that, hey, this messed up situation could have happened, and I don't feel comfortable with still having a life or having a baby, even if it's to give it up for adoption, just because someone doesn't want me to have it's just because they don't want me to kill a baby because this is against the law. Well, what happened to me was against the law. Me continuing to have this baby is
Hold up.
problematic.
In the cases of rape, let's be clear about this. In the cases of rape, because I heard Donald Trump say this myself out of his own mouth, that he does have exceptions in what he's pushing, and that's just that nobody is pushing. Everybody, I think, unanimously. I mean, and I haven't seen anybody who opposes exceptions. They just don't want what's been happening, from my understanding, which is a total outlier of the system where people are just going down that joint 3 times a year. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just, where has
But
been.
that's
And I'm gonna
when
tell you too.
when I say pro-life, that's their life. I mean, pro-life is life itself. That's like our life that we live in is pro-life. Like you have the decision to do what you want to do at that point. Like I understand what you're saying, but at this variation,
Murder.
huh?
That's your life, okay? But should you not be charged with murder? There's a certain line. There's also a line when that
Yeah,
child
but
is no longer
God,
just a fetus. That child is now a human being inside your body, and that's something that these things again. We religion is a thing. I don't know where people seem to somehow forget it. And again, it's a delicate situation. I'm not saying what religion is best than anything. I'm just saying that it exists. So because of that, there are also decisions that factor outside of just the immediate situation. And we can just say the girl that has a time of her life 3 times a month out the year, and this just so happens to be something that happens, and it's not something that she wants to continue because maybe she can't find the father and she doesn't know who the dad is, or maybe she does know and they don't get along. Yes, I'm with you on understanding that that person should be able to decide, but also at some point in time, this is also dangerous to that person.
I agree, and
mm-hmm.
It's also something to say that people should be wary or be careful of their decisions. That's why there are so many things that prevent this from even being the step. So if they take it all the way off the board, and it's sometimes what you would consider a parent doing to bad kids. It's a dry threat. It's a threat that's so hard that you feel like it's real, but maybe the parent's just doing it to get you to cool out. the country has gotten a little off the hook, and I do agree both sides. I definitely do. But that, and thank you for clearing up the Roe v. Wade, you know what I'm saying? Like that was literally perfect. You know what I'm saying? How you guys put it. But I do understand the decision on both sides. I understand to not be able to do that, and I understand to do it. I have personal experience in that situation where I was young and I made a decision, or me and my lady at the time made a decision. It was hard, and I regret everything about it. So I don't think that it's something to do, but our situation wasn't of rape or bad circumstances. We were just young, and even still, I think that was a scared thing. I think we were just scared and unprepared. I don't think that that's a reason to not have a child. We just were scared and unprepared. Those thoughts and those feelings exist, but I don't think that that's a reason to say no. That child could have went up for adoption, or maybe we would have had the BLLS to do it at the time once it came around. You know what I'm saying? But other reasons that are more significant, or adults that say, hey, this is not going to work and they're not going to be able to raise a child right. And I know firsthand, because kids out here are not being loved. I do understand that sometimes maybe that means is a means, but maybe the time frame needs to be shortened. You know what I'm saying? Like there are things that maybe need to be discussed. And like you said, certain places can set their own rules. Maybe it should be on the ballot for certain states, because maybe there's a population of people that believe this way, that live a little, like, you know what I'm saying, live here, or live in this county, or live in this district, or live in this area, that just, you know, they're like-minded people, and maybe they all feel the same way. Maybe they have less likely chances of things like this happening, where they don't have to go to the clinics and things like this so often. You know what I'm saying? Maybe parents will be able to talk to their kids, because there's not a slew of kids out here with parents who don't care about them. You know, I do understand it's a tender subject, but it's one to have. I don't think that people should, again, same thing I said about the last subject, it's more of a conversation that needs to, let's work on the solutions more than the problem. The problem is it's there. It's there, and it's really glaring. So the approach to it to me would be very, very delicate, but how you approach it is also a good way, a good indicator to look at how you're able to handle the situation moving forward.
Yeah. And just to clarify, that's what JD Vance's stance was. Basically, was like, a lot of people feel like, when, especially like, just to your point, Vito, when he said a lot of people feel like when they figure out they have an unplanned pregnancy, a lot of people, when they're young especially, feel like their life is over if they don't go and do that. And he said that's because the community has failed in regards to resources and in regards to support. And he feel like that his administration up under Trump, they want to provide resources and support, so that that's not the first option as soon as an unplanned pregnancy comes about. So he felt like that's what we're dropping the ball at.
That's a really good answer for me, for someone who's had the situation before in the past. I honestly think that that's a good answer now, and I don't care what side it was. I do know which side it is, but that was just a good answer. I'd like to hear what the other side had to say.
Yes, indeed. Okay, let me see on that one. Let's see on that one what they had to say. Waltz had to say that Waltz said he agreed with much of what Vance said. Ironically, my notes said. All right.
Yeah, they was doing a lot of that in the second half.
I understand the answer.
Both of them.
That's a technical. That's a very, very delicate situation. You don't want to go too far to the left or to the right with that, without an understanding that every city, because it's really hard to. Because what voter do you address? Do you address the rape victim that's a voter? Do you address the young parent that's a voter? Do you address the older person that had this situation in the past? So I think the best way to handle that is just to try to not to stay far away from it as if you don't want to address it at all, but kind of play the middle as best you can in that situation.
I'm gonna tell you what happened that got, not to cut you off, that got Waltz clipped up. That is when that question came about that law that he signed, in which in which the abortions, the law of the abortion we were just talking about. I believe that kind of threw him off his game on that specific question.
So what law did he put in?
We just talked about it. Y'all will go over the law again, point and big sign.
If you did, that's cool.
No, it's just about if the If the abortion is botched, you know,
Right,
the
right. I remember.
you know,
Yeah.
I remember. I got you.
And so I think he kind of got a little tripped up. He got a little tripped up doing
Yeah,
that.
so his best answer is to agree with Vance.
At that point, right.
Yeah, no, exactly. Right.
yeah, on the comeback, yeah, when Vance said on the comeback when they asked about that, the reporters asked about that, and you know, at the end of the day, he did the right thing.
Right. So JD Vance was critical of Donald Trump previous to joining on as his mate, as his running partner, not mate, running partner, as his running partner in this. You know what I mean? So they asked JD Vance about that. They said, hey, like, and I'm gonna put it in a hood type of way. They was like, look, bruh, how do we know you just ain't no yes man? Because at first, before you was running with the dude, you know, you ain't like him. Now all of a sudden you running with him, you like everything he do. Why we know you just a yes man and you been giving them yes man advice? So many words, that's what they asked him. J.D. Vance basically said Donald Trump proved him wrong. And in so many words, he said that seeing this economy and seeing how things went now lets him know how good of a job Trump did previously. So, what do y'all feel about that? How do y'all feel about Trump? I mean, I know me previously, I voted for Hillary all the way back when he ran against Hillary. And I do have different feelings now after seeing things play out. What do y'all feel about what JD Vance said and how he approached this, you know, and what are y'all thoughts on Trump or any other elections or any of the politicians over the last few years and how things are going?
I feel like they all flip flop. They all be hating on each other, and then they end up getting together. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden debated, and they both known each other back and forth. And now Kamala Harris is Joe Biden's vice president. So
Yeah, I feel like Leo because I feel like JD Vance is running because he couldn't run on the Democratic side. I feel like he's pulling the Trump move. Like Trump is an independent. We all know he's not really a Republican. He came in on the Republican side so he can get the votes. I feel that JD Vance is doing the same thing. Hey, and guess what? It's a power move. It's smart. It's smart.
That's
I
not.
can't hate the man for doing that.
That's not a bad. I ain't gonna lie to you. I didn't even look at it like that until you said that, and I honestly try to look at things from those angles, and that was a really good play. I think that when Donald Trump went to trial last year before he was taken out of the seat, I think to me, and I think I tried to say it then, it showed me where everybody stood at, and it showed Donald where everybody stood at. For Vance to make this play, I think that Donald did actually prove him wrong because so many people stood against him. For Vance to do this, if he doesn't win, he's probably done in politics for a long time. And I don't think that that's the play if that was the reason. You know what I'm saying? I think it's the play because I'm looking at how these things look really, like how it really looks in the fact that economically, even if I say that, you know what, I believe a certain thing and I stand on one side and I make this amount of money, but then I look at my bank account over the last 3 years and I don't got no shady deals with nobody. Let's just say I'm not in no lobbyist pocket or nothing. I'm just a senator. Okay. But I've been paid as a senator for the last 6 years, 7 years. And for the first 3, it was this, or the first 4 it was this. And then over the last 3, I feel like I need another job. Something's wrong with that. Even if other things are wrong and other things are right, let's just say right now, this is not the right thing. And yes, the market, your retirement and all that might be cool. Well, does anybody remember that the people that voted last were grandparents because they were taking away medical, Medicare, MedStar, and all of this stuff, or Medicaid, and they're trying to take away food stamps and different things. So all of the money that's being made in the market is good. It's really good. 401ks and all that looking really great. But you're going to have to take care of your parents. So who's going to take care of you when you get older? It's not just about the first 4 years or the next 4 years or the next 4 years. These things are being taken away from you now for tomorrow. And people are not listening to this stuff enough. So I think that the move is really good for him because I think if anything else, he's going to get a lot of experience financially that he probably never would have got without being under Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's a hell of an angle right there, my brother. That's a hell of an angle right there. You're absolutely right about that. I mean, when you really think about it, the experience is what's going to lead you in a long space. I think we might have, and this is the thing. I think this presidential debate was so good that these two could be potential candidates for next election.
No, I'm with Ro. That's what I said. Like he was nailed on the head with that one, and I didn't even hear him talk until y'all started going over certain stuff, and it's like, well, wow, they sound like the American people more than the two people that was trying to debate all this time.
Yeah, the two people that's debating is spreading America further apart. These two could bring it together. And, you know, that's what I seen in them when I was asking Leo, should we do this jump? And Leo was like, I don't know, son. I was like, nah, bro, I think this jump might actually end up being good, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? It might not be as big as Kamala and Trump, but I think it's gonna be good. And it was good. I'm glad we did
it. Was good. It was good. I would say it wasn't as entertaining as the Trump Kamala jump. They had.
I mean, they more about business though.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? They was right down to business.
But especially to let the American people know who they really are, I think this was a really good outing. I think this is an amazing outing, actually, for both candidates, to be real. All right. All right, moving right along. When they asked about the economy, and Tim Waltz said that what they planned on doing was doing the housing down payment assistance programs. He said that it worked masterfully in his state of Minnesota, where he's from. And he said that Trump's tax credit added $8 trillion, to the national deficit. Then came back and said, well, whatever her plan is, she is not doing it now. Why isn't she doing it now?
Well, can I answer that one?
Huh?
Can I answer this one?
Yeah, that's what I'm about to say. What do you guys feel about both points? And you know, how
okay. I'm gonna tell you why she isn't doing it now. She isn't doing it now for the same reason that Joe Biden. If we can all go back, and I'm on this one hard because my wife is a part of this deal that he swore to the American people that he will get done. Oh, don't worry about it. I'm gonna pay the college debts. That's what we're gonna do. So come on, when you say something like that, I don't believe a word out your mouth because Joe Biden didn't do what he said he's gonna do, and you're backing him now. You're about to be ahead, and you're saying you're going to. I don't believe a word out of neither one of y'all mouth because neither one of y'all have done nothing good in that direction. So don't start talking that talk now, trying to get the American people to give you a vote. BS in my book. I don't want to hear it.
We got Big Son touched by the spirits on that one. I don't know if I want to touch that one.
That's flat out BS because I'm living through it. It's BS. I'm living through it.
Hey, Big Son. Yeah, you spoke with the validity in that one. Everybody else like, God damn, you know what? Do you really want to touch it after that one? I mean, but I'm gonna be real. I agree with Big Son. I don't agree. I don't think that they're going to do what they say they're going to do when it comes to that situation. Student loan debt has been one of the main topics over the last couple of elections. It ain't been done yet. So for Kamala Harris to still be, banking on an old promise, I don't know. I don't know how.
I mean, it's just something. Y'all got to think about this. Like, how can I put it? Say, for instance, our grandparents, you know what I'm saying, had some deals with some families. Just because our grandparents is dead, them families still want their money. Yeah. It's the same thing with this college. Them banks still want their money. These people ain't dead. These people still here. Them people want their money. Them people sign stuff. And guess what? I'm not saying that they shouldn't have, you know what I'm saying, went to college and did all that. But at the end of the day, we don't have an economy to serve these people after they go out here and get these degrees. They go out here to get these degrees. They go and work in McDonald's, Burger King's, other places that they shouldn't be working at. These companies that, say they want these people go get these degrees and y'all don't hire them. So what do you expect them to do? It's going to be a debt. Guess what? They don't have the money and these people want their money. It's two problems on both sides of the board. So stop making broken promises because it's not going to happen. It's a bunch of broken promises and y'all just putting people further in debt and making people's situations worse than what they already are. They scrambling to make it now. And y'all making promises like that. And then you made a promise. So you got people believing you. So people, you got people lapse and stuff like, oh, they're going to get that taken care of. This is what you promised people. You ain't just saying you promised it.
They pushed it back as if you were deferred, and some people honestly forgot about it. Then when you said you were going to promise to defer everybody, you made them wait a little bit longer and said, we got it taken care of. Just give us a little moment. They do. They say, we can't do it. We've helped out 10,000 people, and that's all that we had money for. So 10,000 lucky people across the country were able to be forgiven for their loans. And there are, Rose said, essentially maybe 25 million foreigners that have just popped up over here out of nowhere, no paperwork or nothing. But 10,000 lucky people got saved on there. You know what? I think I'm a little tired of right now. You guys continue on down.
Yeah, and you expect me to believe that y'all going to find $25,000 to give all Americans who want to buy a home, please. Where that's going to leave the apartments that y'all have in the United States. I live in an apartment. What y'all going to do with my buildings, huh? What y'all going to do?
I agree with Big.
What y'all going to put the Migos that just came here in there? It ain't enough. It ain't enough buildings. You can't hold them. It ain't enough. I live in a complex. You ain't gonna tell me, because if you give us $25,000 to go get a house, I mean, we ain't going far. And what you gonna do with these buildings once we gone?
Yeah.
These complexes can't hold up all of the Migos y'all just let over here. And we talking about the Migos. Let's talk about the Ukrainians. They over here too. If we want to be honest, they are over here. When I was doing Uber a couple years ago when all that stuff was going on, I mean, they was in my car heavy. They over here too. Talking about how they got nice houses where they stand at and all. Yeah, they here too. So let's not forget about them either. Ukrainians over here too. So I don't see it, bro. I don't know.
All right.
I'm tired of the broken promises, though, the empty promises. You can keep them. I'd have had enough of those in my life.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go through the last one of the day, the last subject we'll discuss of the day, and then we'll move into final thoughts on what you guys thought overall about the debate and overall about the election. And just to let the people know, we are here to encourage you guys. Vote. This the point of us doing the show is to give you more information on the candidates and on the subjects and on the concerns around the country right now. We want you guys to vote, though. Go out there, exercise your voting power. Please get registered to vote. It is not hard. You can do it online. And there's plenty of other places you can do it in person. If you feel more comfortable with that, just look it up. Make some effort. Don't be lazy. And exercise your right to vote. It is a right. It is a privilege. It is a demand. It is a duty that you vote. So make sure y'all get that done. Going to the last joint, the last subject. You got Tim Waltz, who said basically, no, we're gonna have JD Vance. JD Vance basically said that they told us that if we sent all these manufacturing jobs overseas, if we sent all these different things overseas, all these jobs, and get our stuff built overseas, it would make for a better America. They lied to us. JD Vance said, we got the ops making everything, including our medicine that we put in our body. These people we can go to war with at any point in day. So why is they making everything, including medicine? That's what he says. He said you got the ops making stuff. Tim Waltz came back and said that just go back to Big Son point. Big Son brought this up earlier, that Trump ain't paid his taxes. That Trump ain't paid his taxes. And that within the economy, we are tired of the top level getting looked out for while the bottom level don't get middle, not even the bottom level. He said the middle class. While the middle class don't really get looked out for, they are looking for fairness within this economy. What do you guys think about both guys' sentiments on that?
I mean, both of them got valid points about fairness in the economy. And JD, what'd you say? JD said again.
JD said that hold on, let me get back to it. Look at my notes. That they sending all the jobs overseas.
Yeah. Both of them got valid points. We definitely shouldn't be sending all our jobs overseas. Y'all let all these people in the country. Somebody got to work and build this economy back up. Y'all let too many people in.
Let me rephrase it. That they said that if we sent all our jobs overseas, it would make for a better America. This is what they told us. We tried it. It did not work. They lied to us because it hasn't made for a better America. That's what JD Vance said. Just to clarify.
I mean, a lot of stuff that we do and take it broad is not good. I complain immensely about the outsourcing of everything that we do over here because, so not to be funny, but when I was working for Uber at the time, and I call, and you got roosters in the background, somebody is speaking broken English, and we on the phone trying to communicate, but we can't communicate because I can't understand you and you can't understand me. And then it becomes a frustration. And then it becomes a screaming battle until, either you get off the phone or I get off the phone, or you hang up or I hang up because we're so frustrated. Like I have to agree with them on the outsourcing thing. It's not working for nobody. It's not working in the clothing market. It's not working in the phone market. Like everybody outsourcing, T-Mobile and all of y'all. Y'all need to stop what y'all doing, trying to save a buck. How many bucks can you save? I mean, how much money do you really want? How much money do you need? Let's be honest. How much money do you need to survive for a month? You need $1 million to survive for a month? You need $1 million to survive for a month? It's a problem. You know what I'm saying? So I totally understand them on the outsource, and I totally understand Waltz, because y'all like I said earlier, I don't see how somebody can go 15 years. I don't care how good your guy is, your accountant or who he is, and you don't pay not a dime in taxes. I don't care. I just don't care, because if it was one of us, we'd be sitting in jail somewhere.
So let me ask you: Does outsourcing make for a better America?
No, because have you seen some of these outsourcing videos? Like the dude that was making the COVID mask. You seen them, Jones?
No, I didn't.
I mean, dude got this little crusty, rusty foot. They've been walking God knows where all day. He wiping his nose. He ain't got no mask on while he making it. He wiping his nose. He slapping the mask over there all around his feet, his toes. I'm like, what? It's very unsanitary. I mean, y'all seen it. That's why y'all laughing. Y'all seen these videos. When COVID was going on, all these videos started coming out. Don't wear these masks right here. The blue ones. The blue ones, everybody had them. You had Toe Jam Sam mask. You hear me? That was Toe Jam Sam bagging them jumps up for you. So no, I don't agree with the outsourcing. No, keep this in my backyard where I can see what Sam back there doing.
Nah, I have to agree with Big Son on this situation though. Outsourcing is a problem whenever you're trying to keep your country strong. because you begin to run to the outsourcing as a method. I mean, the best way for your country to remain strong is if you produce something, anything, multiple things. And so, with the motor industry going down years ago, the housing market is not necessarily great. There's certain aspects of your country that you want to keep, true. Agriculture has gone down quite a bit as well. So when you think about all of these elements, what do we have here to produce, to give to the world, so we can internally make money here? And so outsourcing is a problem. Where you outsource too much, you're giving too much money into another person's country, because we need all of the jobs, all of the manufacturing that we can have here at home.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so
We definitely need them jobs.
before we go, what we're going to do is a little rapid fire session, which I like to call for or against. I mean, you can opt out now because we're going to ask some political questions. I'm not going to force nobody to do it. So you can opt out now if you don't want to answer the political questions, because they are going to be very ambitious. Let's just say that. So, any opting out?
I ain't gonna lie, bro. If I don't want to answer it, I ain't gonna answer it. But,
No, you can't. No, you can't do that.
I'm in. I'm in.
Now,
but I'm letting you know now. I'm letting you know now that I will try to the best of my ability to answer the question. I'm just telling you that. I'm not gonna lie to the people, man. I ain't up here to get no political ass. I'm gonna tell the truth.
That's all. All you got to do is say for or against. That's it. For or against. That is it. You ain't saying nothing else. For or against. It is a rapid fire session. For or against. That's all you're saying.
Where's he?
All right. Illegal immigration. Send it around the room.
You said what?
Illegal immigration. For or against?
Against.
Against. Yeah, that's
okay. The war in Gaza.
Against.
Against. I'm against all war.
The war in Ukraine.
Against.
Against.
I'm for that war. I'm for that war. So, and I can explain why. I just feel like, based on my information, what they was trying to do, the UN was trying to essentially put weapons really close to the border of Ukraine. So this is why they got invaded, for Putin to stop that from happening. And so I just think they would have instigated, much more than what we see now, if that makes sense.
That's fine. You got your reasons. I'm still against the war. I'm sorry.
And Russia, if it's going to prevent things from going crazy, I'm for that war.
My take on it is that these leaders got to learn how to control them goddamn selves on both sides. I ain't saying on one side or the other, but on both sides. If you know that's going to start a problem with your neighboring country, don't do it. Straight up.
Yeah, I agree. You got to live next door to them.
Yeah.
So I agree with that. Abortion. For or against? For or against?
I'm for it, for your own decision. I'm against taking the life, but here in life you got your own decision. So
I'm going to say that I am for. Only reason I'm going to say that I'm for, because there are cases of rape and like molestation and stuff like that. And if I could say against with asterisk or something, then I would do that. But I guess I just got to say for in this situation.
Okay. Biden's removal as the vice president nominee for the Democratic Party.
As the presidential nominee?
As the presidential nominee.
Oh yeah, I'm for that. Well, I don't even know why you on the ballot.
No, I'm saying his initial removal, the way they did it, he's already been removed, the way that they did it and the methods that they took.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
I mean,
think
I don't like it. I think they was just covering up the fact that we all knew. You know what I'm saying? It was really no reason for y'all to try to cover it up. We seen multiple videos of him, not going through the right doors, not exiting the right way, all type of stuff. Not remembering lines. So we knew it was there.
I'm
You
against
know,
it because he's still running our country. He's
There you
currently
go.
still running our country. If he's not good enough to be the next president, how is he still running our country right now? That's
Yes,
the thing I don't.
that's a very valid question.
That's the thing I do
easy
not
because he
understand.
ain't.
Because y'all think that he's not good enough to be the candidate because he didn't step down. Y'all pushed him out, which is a difference. And when I say y'all, I mean Democrats because I'm to no party. I'm not a Democrat nor a Republican. So I say y'all, meaning that's part of y'all party. Y'all did this stuff, and y'all shouldn't have. I think it was a Bama move, and y'all shouldn't have did it.
Where's the debate at? They all in a pizza shop.
Mayor Adams was arrested. The New York City mayor, the black guy. Are you for or against him in his legal fight?
I'm for.
I don't know nothing about his case.
I don't care. I think he friends with Merrill Bowers. I'm for it.
This is where I have to bow out of this one, bro, because I don't know nothing about his case. So I really can't be for or against. I
I
don't
know
know.
he friends with Murray. That's all I need to know.
He friends
I'm
with Diddy
for it.
too, but what that mean? He friends with Diddy too, but what that mean?
Oh, that mean I'm for it. We know what the old bodyguard father was doing out there. We know what he was doing. The Johnson tycoon. We know what he's doing.
All right, well, that's the end of the rapid session. You know what I'm saying? We move right into final thoughts, get y'all last and final thoughts on this debate and on the election overall, man. I think that's it. There's no more debates until election day, man. We're going to cover the election that's on November 4th. We will be live all night, man. That night we will be live, man, talking it up, getting it in, trying to see what that will bring for the election. That might be done somewhere. We might have some form of an event for that night that we might be broadcasting from or in junction with. So just want y'all to give y'all a heads up there. So, but we will be live that night. The election is coming up. Give me y'all thoughts on everything, the whole process, everything that's taking place. What do we want out of this election? Just, man, whatever you want on your final thoughts. Swinging around the room.
I can go first because mine's going to be pretty short and sweet. Look, we got to see a presidential debate. We got to see a vice presidential debate. To me, the vice presidential debate was done at a higher level of debating than the presidential debate, which I guess gives me a little bit of a little bit better notion that the future of the country may be in the hands of some competent people. I feel like this was a very competent debate right here. They've done a very good job. But as we go into this election season, I don't want people to forget that this is a choice. Your choice. You should not be swayed by what the media tells you. You should do your research. You should not be swayed by what one candidate tells you about the next candidate. You should do your research. I think that there's enough time this last month before the election for everybody to do enough research to say that I'm confident in who I'm going to check this ballot box for. Or guess what? Both of these candidates suck ass. We all boycotting. We are all boycotting. And who with me? Well, regardless of what your choice is, you should be able to make that choice with having all of the knowledge and research available that you have because you have it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate your time. This has been Point B. Kept it short and sweet.
Great point, Leo. My final thought is I don't want Trump or Kamala, after I'm saying this here, go and snatch them right off the ballot and put Waltz and Vance up there, president and vice president. Straight up. After what I just saw today, I seen two more competent people that look like they know what they want, know what they want, know what they could do, as far as the job. I also think that if them two were the top candidates to come in, I think that they would set a lot of records straight. And that would make America great again in my eyes. Those two guys right there that we just saw tonight, they brought up valid points. They were very two class acts, if I could put it that way, two class acts. Also, I like to throw in the fact that them guys, when there was sensible comments being made, it wasn't a look over or undertaking. It was an understanding, so I can take a lot from them two guys and seeing that from candidates, knowing human response and having understanding. Like when JD said, I didn't know your 17-year-old son went through that. He ain't have to say that. He could have went on with the debate, but the humanality of it all, the call and response to still realizing that, hey, we're still human, or even though this is debate, still human, we still got life, still moving in the natural realm. So I can put a lot of respect on that. So that's my final thoughts. Your boy, Big Son.
All right. So basically, this was a great debate tonight, to be honest. Those guys really, I think, did a good job on both ends. I thought that they both had their strong suits. I think JD Vance is sharp. I just think he's sharp. I think, there was spots where they asked him about things that he had to veer into something else to kind of throw off and not really having to answer, maybe not the question in the manner of which he answered other questions. However, he did try to make it a point to answer most of the questions. I did see that out of JD Vance tonight. Tim Waltz, I felt like was good, especially in the second half of the debate. I felt like first half, it was too much of Trump. Second half, he came back and really redeemed himself a lot in it, and really focused on how he felt, his own experiences and things that he drew from. And then once he did that, I felt like he shined a little bit. And I felt like he had some moments in the second half of it. The election is coming up. This is an election year. And so, again, I encourage everybody to get on out here and put your name in the ballot and register. It ain't hard. It don't take a lot. It's not what people say it is. It's not that complicated. Research the candidates, though. Research what them guys have done for you. Meaning for your people. Research their histories. Figure out who they are. And if you don't know, try to talk to somebody, ask somebody, click up, start a Facebook political group for Blacks. Do whatever it is that you have to do in order to stay.
YouTube is available.
Yeah, on YouTube is available. Right. Whatever it is, do what you got to do in order to stay relevant in that space. It's only right. It's only right. However, this is the final debate for this election, and the election is coming up. It's been a whirlwind this election year. You've had 2 assassination attempts. You've had a guy kicked off of the campaign trail. You got the first woman to take to become the Democratic nominee. The first woman who wasn't elected to become the person.
Nah, she wasn't the first woman. Hillary Clinton was.
Oh, Hillary Clinton was. Okay, the first Indian woman, the first Indian woman to be elected to the thing, So it's just been a lot. It's been a lot. It's been a lot going on. And somehow, some way, we've made it to this point. A good, respectable debate. I feel like politics are in good hands. I feel like JD Vance might have made himself a star tonight. Tim Waltz as well. I think Tim Waltz did good, for what he had to work with. I mean, so overall, I think the political spectrum in America is in good hands moving forward. I think we need Vance is an example that we need more young people involved, younger people. You ain't got to have them young, but younger people involved in the political spectrum. I think Vance is a glaring opportunity to show what this generation, millennials, quote unquote, can do. And especially given the role that he's been given. I mean, he did really well tonight, you know. So again, we ain't going to do too much. However, I just wanted to kind of just shine a light on that a little bit, shine a light on this debate, shine a light on the candidates and some of the issues. So that's without further ado. We'll see you tomorrow. Workhorse Wednesday.
Workhorse.
You know, and so you know, we'll see y'all tomorrow. Get back that Redskins big win. We'll go over the film for that Washington Redskins huge against the who they played Sunday.
Arizona Cardinals.
Against the Cardinals. That huge win, 42-17 over the Cardinals. We'll go through the film for that one. See y'all tomorrow at 10:30 or 10:45, between 10:30 and 10:45. Y'all make sure y'all come on in and lock in. See what's going on. If you're walking home, walk safely. Driving home, drive safely. Whatever you're doing, just make it home safely. Signing out, it's ETA Row.
Big son.